Okay, welcome back everyone to another great episode of The Human Role. So as mentioned previously, I have another amazing, fantastic guest on. We have Marnie Robbins today. She is a founder of By People Studios. She basically goes into companies and helps them with all of their people operations strategy. So that goes hand in hand with what we're talking about today, because I really wanted to give you guys really heavy insight on people operations and the importance of that. It's been important in companies, but like I've said in so many past episodes, we're now in a heavier employee market versus an employer market. It kind of seems. So we really want to focus on our people, right? And what we can do from an HR stance to really make sure our people feel welcome to kind of help with tenure. So before we get into all the, nitty and gritty of it, I wanted to welcome Marnie, allow her the floor to give her background and let you all know what her company is really doing in case you guys need her support. So Marnie, thank you so much for being here. Please take a couple of minutes to go through your experience and the great, amazing things your company is doing. And then from there, we'll get into, the details of people operations.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiana. It's such an honor to be here. I was really excited when you invited me. I love what the human role is doing and the vibe. So definitely excited to be here. So yeah, a little bit about me and By People Studio. So as you mentioned, we're all about helping companies create a people experience and ecosystem that vibes with their purpose, brand, their values, and the culture that they're ultimately striving for. A little bit about my background and how I got to this point was I accidentally stumbled into HR out of college, kind of got just into the field and stuck with it. And in 2013, I really got into the technology arena. And that's when I really started to fall in love with the idea of people operations and people and culture and really shifting, that focus into more holistic and human first in nature. So fast forward to today, I've been a head of people for some amazing, forward-thinking companies with really great culture and people processes and whatnot. So I've taken that into By People Studio in hopes of taking what I've learned from these amazing companies that I've worked with and bringing that to more people, because it becomes contagious once you find those people ecosystems that really just click and work, and you really just want to bring it forward to more people and keep experiencing it a bit addictive, I guess, from that standpoint. So here I am.
Here you are. Yeah, no, great, amazing. Thanks. And I'm sure just in the people space in general, in HR space, you definitely, I'm sure, have heard of everything in the book, come across any possible situation that you can think of within companies. Thank you for those details, Marnie. Really great to also have you on. You did kind of like talk about something that I've talked about previously too, where even from like a payroll stance, like myself, I fell into payroll and then got into the HR ops, HRIS. And I think I had a guest on before that was in accounting and then got into HR. So it's just kind of funny to hear people's stories and how we just kind of stumbled and then here we are. We kind of like find our niche. But okay, look, let's get into the details. So I wanted to really start off maybe by kind of getting your insight on how people operations has evolved over the last, some odd years, especially as remote work and hybrid now has kind of like taken over once the COVID hit. And if we're talking to an HR audience and they're trying to figure out how can they continue to be strategic, right? How can they reach someone when they're not seeing everyone every day? How have you seen it evolve, and any kind of like insight, any type of helpful guidance that you can kind of provide?
Hi, I'm Carmen Hudson. I'm the host of the Recruiting Book Club, and we're starting our second season. I'm so excited to bring to you another set of guests of recruiters who have written books. We are excited to have some very special guests this season. We've got Shally, we've got Craig Fisher, James Ellis, and quite a few other people that we're going to bring on board to tell us about what they wrote, why they wrote it, and maybe we'll veer off into a conversation about recruiting on all types of topics and subjects that happen in our industry. So I hope you can join us. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And you nailed it on the head too, at the beginning in your intro of it's an employee market too. There have been so many external factors that have influenced the evolution of people operations in general over the past few years. You mentioned COVID, absolutely. The wider adoption of AI, the market in general. All of this has really shifted the people operations function from this, I reflect back a few years ago where you had more of this captive audience, and the problem statement that we had to solve was much more simple in that respect. We were more ancillary to the business operations, and it was more along the lines of, okay, what systems do we have for benefits, enrollment? What perks do we have? Is there a foosball table? You name it. And more of that from a people experience standpoint. Fast forward to today, and things are much more complex. And the problem statements that we have are more along the lines of, how do we keep people engaged? How do we keep them aligned with what we're trying to do as a company, and also keep them connected, especially as mentioned in a distributed and hybrid and remote work environment? That engagement, connection, and alignment is a really huge piece. So as people operations professionals, we've really had to put on that business acumen hat. And so the metrics that we're looking at, go beyond just turnover or employee engagement scores, all very important. But taking on more of that product design hat and saying, okay, based on some indicators that we're seeing as a business, and maybe this is something with your customer journey, along the lines of, we have low NPS scores with our customer onboarding. Okay, well, that's an indicator. That's actually bring people operations in to get really curious about what is the people aspect of this problem statement. Maybe there are blockers for the employees. Maybe they're not engaged in that area of the customer journey. So what is our hypothesis? How do we design an iteration or a workflow that we think is going to improve that business outcome? And then how do we measure it? And oh, by the way, let's get it onto the leadership scorecard, because it should be on a company scorecard. So the way that we measure our performance and the way that we connect our impact of the people programming that we're designing is much more ingrained in the business operations.
Yeah, so that's perfect. And a perfect segue into my next topic I wanted to pick your brain about was more so about the employee experience and getting them engaged, right? Because say you're doing a hybrid schedule or even allowing remote, which I know some companies are kind of teetering on now. How do you still make sure your employees are being checked in on and feeling important and feeling valued? So I've had one client that I've worked with where they were kind of struggling with that, but then they were like, okay, we'll do like 15-minute like coffee chats. And they would have people from different departments kind of meet, for 15 minutes and kind of strike up conversations and still get that camaraderie that you might have if you were grabbing coffee, in the break room. So stuff like that, I think people felt, happy about that and really enjoyed it. But what have you seen? Anything is maybe like that, or any type of things that you can even think of to really draw in an employee and make them feel valued?
Yeah, such a good question. And I love that example that you bring up, because that's one of the things that I absolutely love to do with clients or, previous employees is go on these listening tours, and checking in with employees. What's the good, bad, and ugly of what's happening right now? Where you just personally within the organization. So I think that has a big part in that engagement. However, that has a shelf life. So if you have a conversation or a coffee chat with a group of people, they may feel listened to for a minute, but where that continuous engagement comes down to that leadership piece. What are their people leaders and managers doing? Because as HR professionals and people operations professionals, it's really hard for us to be completely connected with everyone in the organization, particularly depending on the size. So one of my big pushes that I like to do with organizations are people first meetings. I've also called them culture activation meetings, but it's a regular cadence with people leaders, managers, whatever the nomenclature is, of checking in with the people who need to be checking in with the people. So who's growing in the organization? Like, who's doing a great job? Maybe they're growing out of their role vertically or into another area of the organization. So taking a wider viewpoint of where they could go in the organization. Who's not growing? Is there someone who's maybe stalled? And what's going on? Is there something that we can support or remove any blockers or barriers for them to continue to grow? And then, as far as what tools do you have and resources that you need as a people leader to help continue to foster those really good relationships with your team so that they feel more engaged and connected connected with the rest of the team. So I think that that's one of the biggest things that has helped me. Beyond that, it's really just intentionally designing your people ecosystem. So as you're looking at your employee journey and saying, okay, these are the big moments that matter in our organization. And if I'm putting on my empathy hat and walking in the shoes of someone who's walking through the employee journey in my organization, what are the moments that not only support them as they're walking through that journey, but how do we surprise and delight? Those moments that matter are absolute cues for your culture and help activate a really healthy, engaged workforce. And they may seem small, but they end up having very big impact.
Yes, love that. I love the listening tours, right? So just to everyone out there, like that is really critical, because it's one thing when you're away and you're not in front of everyone, but you get a whole different feel of what's actually happening when you're there in real time. So definitely encourage any C-suite executives, any VPs, HR directors to really make sure you're there helping your people. And exactly what Marnie said, helping your people that are helping the people, right? Yeah. Because, a lot of times we don't feed into our own selves. And so if you're, at a higher level, you're trying to force your HR VP, HR generalist and so forth to really kind of hit the ground running, you really need to make sure they are at their best too, because anything could happen with life. So I love that. I also like how this feeds into the actual culture, right? Because then that leads into more tenure. And a lot of times employees will value that on top of the great benefits that Marnie mentioned. A lot of times employees will value that when they're comparing, you say they're being poached by another company, right? That there can be no comparison when you're having those check-ins and when they feel like really wanted. So that's really critical and important. And it's easily to be forgotten about during the day-to-day, because we all have like our own jobs, our own emails that keep coming and coming, messages that keep coming, fires that happen throughout the day. But we do have to take time to really take care of not only our team so that they can take care of their people. So
Here.
Yeah. So let's get into the technology now, because we obviously can't deny the fact that AI is here, that it is real life taking over. I've had a couple episodes. People are always worried, is it going to take my job or not? But I really think, there's still that human aspect of things. And if you look at the positive side of AI, it can really kind of help give you good ideas and help automate a lot of things, which I think is good. But how do you see like the future of people operations more so evolving, not only just through like AI, but we're talking about multi-generations now, right, that are coming into the business. And this younger generation is totally different from our generation or before us. So curious on how you see technology kind of paving the way or changing people operations over the next some odd years.
To me, it's really exciting. And I realize there's a bit of apprehension too with whether it's AI or HR technology. But I think what we're discovering is AI and technology in general, if utilized in a healthy and proactive fashion, it can walk alongside us. And actually, I always consider it a multi-tool or something that's really supercharging what we're doing. So it's allowing us to take that human aspect of what we do in our organizations and supercharging it, so to speak. From a people operations perspective, what I see changing is speed to delivery. We're going to have, less time spent on coming up with individualized communication. So you had mentioned multi-generational workforce. Oh my gosh, the way that they communicate and receive information is so different. So how do we do personalization at scale? That used to be really hard, or it took more people or a marketing department to really help us communicate effectively in multiple channels. But now we have this technology that can pump out the same information in a multitude of channels in a way that people want to receive that information. And not only receive it, but receive the core message that we intended to have, because you have these kind of games of telephone that could happen by having multiple channels. But if you have these tools, whether it's HR technology, AI, you name it, you have the ability to really control that personalization at scale. So I think that that's going to be huge. Also, we're at the center of needing to upskill our employees and making sure that they're remaining curious when it comes to these technology advancements and learning together. So for instance, I have a client that had an AI Slack channel, and then they would have these lunch and learns of like, what cool things did I learn with AI this week? And they share it with each other. And I think that really promotes that innovative thinking among the team and that connection, especially with different generations and whatnot. It's a great excuse to connect and learn together.
Yeah, perfect. Perfectly well said. And I think like, look, you guys, don't run from AI. It's here. I keep on trying to tell people, just try it out, drop something in Chat GPT or, Gemini, or whichever you prefer, and really just kind of see how fast it does work. Of course, we need to be careful with the data we're putting in there, but you just want to like help you, or if you aren't really sure if you're missing something on something that you've already filled out, just drop it in and see. It'll give some really great advice there, which is perfect.
Exactly. In baby steps, right? Sometimes it's a matter of, oh, did you try ChatGPT with that? Like it'll help you out. And all of a sudden it gets a little more comfortable. And then you start to know the nuances, of what that looks like. And then you move from the ChatGPTs to a lot of times our current HR tech stack is starting to bring those innovations into their technology. So if you have an HRIS system, chances are they've implemented some sort of AI, whether it's a chat bot. I work with MeatyBot, who is an HR chat bot that integrates into Slack so that we're no longer answering tickets, individually. It's literally taking that off of our shoulders. So there's a lot of cool things out there, but it's baby steps. Yeah.
Yeah, it can be kind of wild when you put it in there and it's like, whoa, like it just pops up everything. But let's get into some leadership. So I know we've already talked about getting in front of everyone, checking in with your team, traveling as well, doing those listening tours. Any advice that you would have for leaders who may be trying to connect with their population more? Maybe they don't have the budgets right now to travel. Any, types of one-offs that you can really think, advice you can kind of like hand over to help them, kind of guide them on how to still check in if there's not like funds that they can really use?
First off, I feel for you leaders. I know that a lot of learning and development budgets have been slashed. That formal training has really shifted in the past few years. So being able to be an effective leader without the actual resources or tools that maybe you once had is really difficult. So my first big thing is embrace your coaching mindset. I think coaching as a leadership culture and as a skill set for our people leaders is probably the most impactful way to engage and activate our team and our ecosystems. And so what I mean by that is really taking the mindset of, I'm going to partner with my team, because you don't get a lot of engagement in a traditional hierarchical command and control type environment. People aren't going to be like, oh, that's awesome, I'm totally engaged in this top-down management approach. But if I have a leader who is taking the intentional time to listen and like really listen authentically, if they're listening with intent and to learn and to partner with their teams on a regular cadence, then they're going to be more engaged. They're going to be more excited, and they're going to see that they have the potential to grow within the organization. So as people leaders and managers without those tools, start having your one-on-ones. If you can't do them every week, if you have a big team, that's fine. But every other week, making sure that you're taking the intentional time for half an hour just to say, hey, how's it going with you? What's bubbling up to the surface for you this week? And how can I help you move forward? And also just providing context, making sure that people know the reason behind decisions that are being made so that they can make really good decisions too. I guess that was a lot there. It wasn't the one thing, but put on the coaching hat.
Yeah, multiple, because it's needed, right? And also just, it could be different for every different person, right? Because people work differently. People have different expectations or thought processes. So it's really good for you to kind of just drop a couple of points there so that, our leaders can choose based on who they are speaking to at that time, what may be the best course of action. Every location, if they're dealing with different locations, could be different. Every department could be different. So you want to definitely take that into factor. So really, really good things. But before we head out, Marnie, I wanted to just also give you back the floor, because I believe you also have a podcast and things going So wanted to kind of just have you keep us in the know of that so we can go over to your side too and listen in to let us know what's going on. Additionally, fun stuff on your side.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you asking. So I started a podcast a few months ago, 3 episodes in, and it's called Vibe Makers. And what they are just candid conversations with culture activators. So people who really are pushing that forward-thinking mindset when it comes to culture and, the progression of the HR and people operations industry. So we've had some great founders predominantly on there. We had Alan Paulin with Flint. We had Beth White with MeBeBot and Shrikant Shalapa with Engagedly. All really great conversations. So more to come on that. We also have my Vibe People Studio newsletter. Feel free to sign up. That's just through my LinkedIn. And, right now we're talking about all in cultures, creating an environment where people are all in and engaged in your organization.
Perfect. I love just the word vibe, how you're just taking vibe with you everywhere, because it really is. Vibing is like so critical, especially now. And that's a very like hip word too. I'm kind of jealous I didn't think of that word. So all good things. So you guys will have the links and stuff on the screen as well for you guys to go and check out what Marnie's doing on her side. Please connect with her on LinkedIn. We'll definitely have more future episodes and other people operations and, kind of keep up with that. But yes, Marnie, thank you so much for being on. Really excited to have had you and to gain all your insights. This has been really, really helpful. So thank you. Really appreciate you being here.
I appreciate you having me on. This has been so fun and definitely appreciate everything that you're doing for the industry, Tiana. This has been great. Really had a good time.
Thank you. Okay, guys. Well, look, another great episode coming up in a couple of weeks. So kind of just keep your ears out for that. But thank you so much for joining and listening in, and we will see you in a few.
Bye.